Joining me now, California Representative Ted Lieu, a Democratic member of the Foreign Affairs and Judiciary Committees, and we're glad to say a frequent guest here on the show. Welcome to you, sir. Let's get into what Speaker Pelosi did yesterday, which you know, holding that House Democratic Caucus call. What can you tell us about that in regards to impeachment and where things stand?
Thank you, Alex, for that question. I'm not going to talk about internal caucus deliberations. However, what I will say is that our focus is going to remain on the Ukraine scandal, and that's because no one is above the law. And in this case, it's very clear that Donald Trump put himself above the law by running this shadow foreign policy where he was leveraging the halting of military aid to Ukraine, as well as a meeting with the Ukrainian president, both things that the Ukrainian leader really wanted, in order to get Ukraine to target an American citizen for political purposes. That is wrong. It's a betrayal of our values and abuse of power.
Okay. What about this coming week? Let's look ahead to that, because I know your committee is expecting testimony from former NSC official Fiona Hill and also the ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland. So what do you want to find out from these two?
So we want to know how extensive was this pressure campaign on Ukraine. We know it was more than a one-off conversation between the president and the Ukrainian leader. We know it was the use of diplomats, the use of Trump's private attorneys to do this multi-pronged pressure campaign on Ukraine to get them to interfere in our elections. I also note that it is quite striking that former Ambassador Yovanovitch came in, that Ambassador Sondland has agreed to come in, and that Fiona Hill is coming in, even though they've all been given direction from the White House to not come in and talk to Congress. I think they want to share their story with the American people, and we should hear it.
Where do we stand in the timeline on this inquiry? In other words, how much longer do you expect this investigation to continue, the official inquiry? I mean, how close are we to a potential vote for articles of impeachment?
If we're going to proceed with impeachment, I believe it has to be done before the end of the year. Speaker Pelosi and our caucus will make a decision before the end of the year. What I do want to say is there's already enough evidence that has come out. We've got the call record from the White House showing that right after the Ukrainian leader talks on military aid, Donald Trump immediately asked him for a favor, though. And one of those favors was to target Trump's political opponent. We've got text messages. We have testimony from these ambassadors. So there's already enough information out there to draft articles of impeachment.
But are there areas that you still need to fill in the blanks?
We would love to fill in additional blanks, but there's already enough to draft at least one article of impeachment on the Ukraine scandal. There's already enough to draft at least one article of impeachment on obstruction of Congress of the American people. We're going to continue investigating, but we're not going to basically keep on investigating forever.
Yeah, and just to confirm, you only need one article of impeachment to go down that road, correct?
That is correct.
Let's talk about what was going down yesterday with the former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, who gave more than, 9 hours? Lots of testimony there. Let's take a listen to what Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin had to say about it. Here's that.
You should know every single word that we just heard, but instead, you heard none of it. The American public heard none of it because Chairman Schiff instead chooses to put his own spin to it. And that's outrageous. And the American public are fed up with what they are watching.
I'm curious your reaction to that argument, because notably he is not talking about substance there. He's talking about the process.
What's amazing to me is that Republicans keep talking about process and really make some really stupid arguments. The courts have referred to Congress as acting like a grand jury when we're in an impeachment. And in grand jury proceedings, they're not open proceedings. The public doesn't get to see it. Essentially, what we're trying to do is build a case for an indictment. The open proceedings happen at the Senate trial. So right now, not only should we not have open proceedings because we don't want witnesses to know what other witnesses said, but it's not really the function of how you do these investigations. But despite that, we give Republicans every opportunity to cross-examine. They are in these exact depositions, and they get to have their hour, and then Democrats have our hour, and then we flip back and forth. So I don't really know what Zeldin is talking about.
What about Yovanovitch's testimony yesterday? Did you learn anything new?
What we did learn, again, is that you had this shadow foreign policy happen where you had an ambassador serve under 6 American presidents do an outstanding job, have her boss tell her she did nothing wrong, and then Rudy Giuliani shows up with his associates, and they're able to get Donald Trump and the State Department to remove her because apparently she wasn't going along with their plan to try to get Ukraine to do all sorts of things that benefit Trump personally and not the American people.
Yeah. You know, the president spent the past couple of nights really slamming Democrats. It was happening during a pair of campaign rallies. And I'd like to take a listen to a little bit of the flavor, the tenor from one of those events. Here it is.
The do-nothing Democrat extremists have gone so far left that they believe it should not be a crime to cross our border illegally, and it should be a crime to have a totally appropriate, casual, beautiful, accurate phone call with a foreign leader. I don't think so.
Care to weigh in on the president's performance over the last couple of nights?
The president continues to make things up. In terms of his allegation about Democrats doing nothing, exact opposite is true. We've passed legislation to reduce the price of generic drugs. We've passed legislation for universal background checks on guns. We've passed legislation on the Violence Against Women's Act reauthorization. All of that is bipartisan. We've got dozens and dozens of bills sitting before the U.S. Senate. Mitch McConnell has not taken that up, so it's really a Republican Senate problem.
All right. Congressman Ted Lieu, my home.